What is the answer to an increasingly divided world where our differences become barriers, where those barriers can lead to conflict, and where that conflict can lead to violence, where humanity is no longer flourishing, it's just surviving? I have an idea. Why don't we just stop for a minute and stop listening to those divisive narratives that are out there, planted by those who wish to rule us by dividing us? I think it's time that we start to talk to each other more. I think it's time we start to tell our own stories. So my day trade is being a documentary filmmaker, which means I spend a lot of my time interviewing others and listening to their stories. But today the tables have turned, so I guess it's time for my story. I was born in Huddersfield in 1980, the third son to Indian immigrants. No, they didn't ride into town on horses. This is mum and pop's on holiday, a rare occasion, I can tell you. You see, growing up, I always felt a little disconnected, a little rootless. I guess it's because I'm kind of Indian, but not really. I'm kind of English, but according to some, not really. Here began the idea that I was seen as the other by many people. I mean, my parents wanted me to flourish. You know, they promoted the idea of being a good immigrant. You know, look smart, work hard, and beta, for God's sake, just fit in. I tried. Oh, hello. I'm trying. See, I'm just trying. I tried so hard to fit in. The problem was that, you know, this idea of me being different just resonated in my head. And it didn't help the fact that I just saw and processed the world around me just differently to others. I guess it's because I'm neurodivergent, which I didn't realize to a later date. Or as my friend Smiz likes to put it, neurospicy. I like that. You see, at school, I was trying to perfect the art of camouflage, which was difficult when you had things like Goodness Gracious Me, Apache Indian, and films like Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom as people's reference to Indian culture. And no, let's set the record straight. Authentic Indian food doesn't include monkey brains. But, you know, I plodded on. I remember one day at school spent in a usual day in a sea of white faces. I was doing all right, I was feeling okay. I went into the toilets and my eyes adjusted to the light, and I remember vividly being startled by the brown face that was staring back at me in the mirror. Could I ever fit in? Honestly, the place where I really felt at home, I felt like I belonged, was in a cinema seat. There, I had permission to feel and connect. I was watching these stories of people who, just like me, were searching for something. My imagination was ignited in those fertile grounds of cinema, where stories were planted and my own ideas started to emerge. It's no surprise I became a filmmaker. So I studied and I made a career producing documentaries. I was absolutely fascinated by other people, and I had this knack for interviewing. People just open up and share their stories with me. You know, these precious moments where I was privileged enough to take them, shape them into a film and present them to others. I would agonize over the edit, frame by frame, getting it just right, finding the right piece of music, color grading it so it expressed how I felt. It's safe to say that I began to flourish. And I realized something really interesting, that my pursuit of trying to understand others was a way of me understanding myself. And this powerful image emerged that stories are windows with a reflection. That's pretty good, right? But that reflection, as I was growing up, was still as somebody who was seen as the other by many. You know, you get the comments. I've never seen an Indian drink Guinness before. Okay. Or when I first saw you, I didn't think you'd sound like that. Okay. And my favorite one is, are you all right eating Sunday dinner? Or would you rather have a curry right now? No, I'm fine. Sunday dinner's fine. Although I'm getting visions of what I'm going to do with this Yorkshire pudding right now. You see, I carried around with me this weight of how other people saw me, this perception I thought I was going to get with every white face I'd see. So I'd walk around with my head down, hands in my pockets, and this frown, this protective frown across my forehead. But with every story, with every interview, with every film I was making, it did a lot to alleviate this pressure off my shoulders. I felt like I could breathe. Things changed. So, what did I do next? I produced more films. I interviewed more people. Here's one person I met. This is Pete. I filmed Pete capturing some of the workshops that take place right here in Doncaster, part of the People's Theatre group. I was asked to interview him, and when I looked across, all I saw was a man in a wheelchair with a speech impediment. I didn't want to do it. Was it fear? What was I afraid of? I don't know, maybe the interview would be unusable. Maybe he'd say something and I wouldn't understand it and I get all embarrassed. You see, my prejudice in that moment was filling my head with all these preconceived ideas. Pete was the other to me in that moment. I'm not very proud to say. But when I talked to Pete, I found out he's just amazing. He's such a cool guy. He fills any room with his smile and his joy. He can't help but just say the funny thing that's on his mind. My perception completely changed. I no longer feared speaking to others that had drastically different lives to mine. And when I looked through the window into Pete's story, I saw a man who would not be defined by his disabilities. He was a performer in this space, just like the rest of his peers. And in the reflection, I saw a bit of myself, somebody who too could not help but say the funny thing. Why? Is it because we want to be the center of attention? I think we just want to make people laugh. I think also, like Pete, I want to control the narrative of how people see me. You see, our perceptions shape the way we live our lives. I think we need to regain control of our stories, start to bridge across communities and dismantle those barriers created by those negative stories that find us in the late hours of our doom scroll. I used to think I was a loner, this nomad looking for connection, and I found meaning in the soil of communication. In 2024, I created the podcast, The Doncaster Connection. The idea was to bring together local creative community in conversation so that others that may be feeling rootless themselves could listen and connect with these stories of people who were struggling but were ultimately flourishing. See, throughout my career, I've interviewed immigrants, activists, addicts, people I disagree with, people I envy, people I kind of fear sometimes. And every time I do, when I listen, when I truly listen, I find something I recognize. You see, the other, it's not that different. They may have branched off to this life that we don't recognize, but the tree of humanity remains the same. You see, when I've talked to these creatives, I've realized something, that they'll say that their talent matters, but it's being part of a community that allows them to really flourish. See, there's this illusion that we're living these independent, individual lives, but we're not. We're completely interdependent. Our health, our enjoyment of life, even our flourishment is dependent on human connection. This is what I think we need to do more. Get together and chat. I think it's time that we start to do away with these preconceived ideas of each other. Go out there, reach out and talk to somebody you haven't talked to before. Somebody that you may also consider as being the other. And make an attempt. You know, you could ask them anything. It could be, what did you have for breakfast? That's what I like to ask. I set up my camera, I mic somebody up and they feel a bit intimidated, and I get down to my favorite subject. What food do you like? And inevitably it rolls into a conversation and we start to just chat easily and they feel less intimidated by this camera. This is what I want you guys to do. Become storytellers. Start to share your stories with one another. Start to find connections, because we're all connected. Here's an idea. When you get the chance, in the break, find somebody you've never talked to before and just reach out and ask a question. Could be anything. It could be, what did you think of that talk about that guy and stories and stuff? Oh, he was amazing. He's so inspiring. Or whatever, anything you like. It could be about your own talk. It could even be, what did you have for breakfast? And every time you do, you'll get more and more comfortable with yourself. You'll become more confident. And when you do that, you'll see that something is undeniable. We are not alone. So please remember this one thing from today. Flourishing is not a solo journey. It's a shared one. Thanks for listening.